Above the king's chamber inside the Great Pyramid of Giza, there are 5 additional chambers. Each of these is roofed with massive granite beams, and each beam weighs around 70 tons. To understand how heavy that is, one of these beams weighs as much as 35 large SUVs. There are not just a few, but hundreds of these huge granite beams. What's even more amazing is that they were lifted over 350 feet above the ground and placed perfectly into position. This creates a major puzzle for archaeologists. How could ancient people have lifted and positioned such incredibly heavy stones using only simple tools and physical force? Some experts suggest that the builders may have constructed a long ramp to drag the stones up. But physics presents a problem. When you calculate how long a ramp would have to be with a safe 10-degree slope to reach 350 feet high, it turns out to be extremely long, so long that building the ramp would have required as much effort as building the pyramid itself. Also, such a massive ramp would have had to be made of solid material, not just sand, because sand couldn't support the weight. But no evidence of this giant ramp remains today. That's why this ramp idea starts to seem unrealistic. So some researchers have started to consider other possibilities. Ideas that sound strange but might explain the mystery better. One theory suggests that ancient civilizations may have developed special mental abilities, like telekinesis, the power to move objects with the mind, or telepathy, the ability to communicate without speaking. Today, most people quickly reject these ideas because modern science says such powers aren't real. But what if ancient people had access to abilities of the mind that we've forgotten or lost over time? Using a technology called LAR, likely a ground scanning method, scientists have recently found enormous underground structures beneath the Great Pyramid. These structures go down more than 600 meters into the earth, and they seem to contain massive pillars and spiral-shaped formations called coils. The purpose of these underground features is still unknown, and scientists are only able to see them through scanning images. They haven't physically explored them yet. But what's clear is that the shapes are regular and uniform, which means they were definitely made by someone, not by nature. And even deeper structures seem to lie beneath them. This is all very new information. These discoveries were announced at a press conference on March 16 by the team using this non-invasive technology. What they found suggests that the pyramid may connect to structures that reach 2 kilometers, about 1.2 miles, below the surface. These hidden layers could completely change how we think about the pyramid. There is also a theory that the Great Pyramid was not just a tomb, as often believed, but actually some kind of advanced power plant. One researcher wrote a book in 1998 called The Giza Power Plant explaining this idea. In his more recent book, he now calls it an electron harvester. In simple terms, that means the pyramid may have been used to collect and use electrical energy from the environment. Even today, we use machines that harvest electrons. For example, wind turbines and hydroelectric dams don't create electricity. They collect electrons through motion and turn them into usable power. So the idea of harvesting electrons isn't strange. The theory is that the ancient builders may have figured out a way to do this thousands of years ago, but in a clean, pollution-free way. Throughout human history, many people traveled to ancient Egypt to learn secret knowledge. This area was known for having the most advanced science, wisdom, and possibly even forbidden knowledge of its time. Some even say that famous scientists like Nikola Tesla got ideas from studying ancient Egyptian technology and philosophy. One legendary figure in this story is Thoth, an ancient Egyptian god associated with wisdom. He is connected to the Emerald Tablets, a mysterious set of writings said to contain powerful spiritual and scientific truths. Many people find these writings incredibly deep and far ahead of their time. Some believe that they hold secrets about the universe, consciousness, and energy that modern science is only just beginning to understand. Modern science typically says that human consciousness is created by the brain and cannot exist outside of it. But maybe ancient people understood consciousness differently. Maybe they trained their minds in ways we no longer do, unlocking abilities that seem superhuman to us today. Perhaps those powers are still within us, just asleep and waiting to be awakened. While it's just speculation that they used psychic powers to build the pyramids, one thing is certain. They did something that modern science still can't explain. The Great Pyramid is believed to be over 4,500 years old. The fact that people back then could do something so advanced that it still confuses us today is incredible. It's as if they purposely left behind something so massive and mysterious that future generations would be forced to stop and think. Thousands of years later, we are still looking at the Great Pyramid and asking, how did they do this? And the more we learn, the more it seems like we still don't have all the answers. I've looked at some of the usual explanations for how the Great Pyramid was built, and I've noticed something. They often skip over important parts. For example, they don't talk much about the chambers above the king's chamber. They also leave out the massive granite blocks used in those upper chambers. Maybe that's because they simply don't have a good explanation for them. It's one of those things where people might just say, I don't know. Some believe that the methods used to build the Great Pyramid are far more complex than what is usually taught. It's not just about stacking stones. It involves multiple parts working together, like the long shafts inside the pyramid. It's a full system, not just one technique or tool. You've probably heard the names King's Chamber and Queen's Chamber, but some experts don't believe those names describe what the rooms were actually for. Out of respect for Egyptian tradition, many still use those names, but they think these chambers served completely different functions. Originally, the outside of the Great Pyramid was covered in smooth, polished limestone. This made the pyramid shine brightly in the sunlight, almost like a mirror. Though most of that outer layer is gone now, historical descriptions say it could have reflected a huge amount of light. Some researchers think that even this polished surface was part of the pyramid's overall design and had a specific purpose. In fact, some believe that every single part of the pyramid had a practical use. Nothing was done just for decoration. Let's look at the inside layout of the pyramid. In images showing the interior, you'll see the king's chamber, the northern and southern shafts, and other smaller passageways. Some people believe that the shafts point towards stars, and in ancient times, you could look up through them and see specific constellations. But others suggest a very different idea. They believe these shafts were not for stargazing, but instead had a purpose related to energy or technology. According to one theory, though it's still a speculation, these shafts served at least 4 different purposes. This theory comes from someone who used a broad approach to research. They didn't just rely on traditional archaeological sources. Instead, they pulled information from many different areas in an attempt to understand how the pyramid worked. When you're looking for answers to a mystery like this, it helps to explore every possibility. When researching the pyramid, this person studied the chambers above the so-called King's Chamber in great detail. Each of these upper chambers includes large granite beams that weigh about 70 tons. That's the same as 35 big SUVs. These heavy beams were lifted over 350 feet above the ground and placed with extreme precision. To make it even more impressive, the granite was not local. It came from a place called Aswan, located about 500 kilometers, more than 300 miles, south of the pyramid site. So not only did they move these giant stones a huge distance, but they also lifted them high into the structure with amazing accuracy. This level of engineering is hard to explain using only simple tools and manpower. It suggests that the builders had a deep understanding of construction, design, and possibly even knowledge or techniques that we no longer use today. If you had the chance to travel back in time, is there a specific moment in history you'd want to see? Right now, I'm deeply fascinated by the Ice Age. If I could choose one time to visit, I wouldn't go to see the construction of the Great Pyramid. Not at the moment, at least. I'd go back about 12,800 years, to the start of what's called the Younger Dryas period. That's the time I believe everything about the human story changed. It was a huge turning point, when humanity might have shifted from one path to an entirely new one. After the massive, destructive events during the Younger Dryas, between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, we start to see signs of civilization appear. But I don't think those were the first civilizations. I believe they were restarts of older ones that had been wiped out by some major catastrophe. That's why I'd want to go back and witness that moment in history. One of the biggest mysteries to me is the shafts in the so-called Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, the southern and northern shafts, in particular. When I tried to understand what they were for, I couldn't accept the usual explanations. If you study the details closely, you'll find that 2 channels lead toward the chamber, but they don't actually enter it. These shafts were completely unknown until 1872, when an explorer named Wayneman Dixon discovered them. He saw a crack in the chamber wall and pushed a rod through it. The rod went in very far without hitting anything. Curious, he had one of his workers chisel around the crack, and that's how they found the shaft. It's crazy to think about it now, because today we have tools like ultrasound to scan things non-invasively. But back then, people were poking and chipping away without fully understanding what they were doing. Still, even though they were damaging the structure, we wouldn't know about many of these inner features if they hadn't done that. It's the same story with the hidden chambers above the King's Chamber. Those were discovered by Colonel Howard Weiss during his military expedition, where he used explosives to blast his way in. It was a rough method, but it revealed things we might never have found otherwise. Now, some people believe that humans could have built the pyramid using just strength, planning, and enough manpower. That might be true, especially if they had advanced knowledge of engineering and math. But the real challenge isn't just building it, it's how they moved those enormous stones. Some of the blocks weigh up to 80 tons and were brought from quarries hundreds of miles away, like Aswan, which is about 500 miles from Giza. Just moving those stones, let alone placing them with such precision, is incredibly difficult to explain. Would you build a structure like that on sand? Probably not. But that area wasn't always desert. Thousands of years ago, the Nile Valley was a fertile green area. It had water, vegetation, and maybe even more advanced technologies than we usually give ancient people credit for. Some even joke that they had electricity and Wi-Fi, because their knowledge seems so advanced. That's where the Younger Dryas impact theory comes in. It suggests that a massive event wiped out earlier, highly advanced human civilizations. We, today, could just be the descendants of the few survivors who rebuilt over time. There have been times in human history when the population dropped dangerously low. Scientists believe that, at one point, there may have been as few as 7,000 people left on Earth. That tells you how fragile human survival has been. Back to the shafts in the Queen's chamber. Remember, they don't go all the way into the room. Originally, they stopped about 5 inches short. Someone later chiseled through that final bit of limestone. But why did the builders design it that way? To answer that question, I had to study how the entire pyramid might have worked. One of the most important clues is the northern shaft. Its size and shape are very similar to something called a waveguide, which is used to direct microwave energy. A waveguide is like a special tube that helps control and guide microwave signals more efficiently. The shape and dimensions of the shaft are close to the wavelength of hydrogen, suggesting that maybe it was meant to carry or focus some kind of energy. Could this mean the ancient builders had technology we don't fully understand? Possibly. If this waveguide theory is right, it could mean they were using the pyramid to direct energy in some way, maybe to move stones, cut through rock, or something else entirely. The possibilities are mind-blowing. And now, modern scientists have made even more incredible discoveries. Underneath the Great Pyramid, researchers have found a massive underground network, around 2,000 feet deep, hidden beneath layers of earth and stone. This maze of tunnels and large chambers is giving us new insight into the secrets of ancient Egypt. The truth might be far more strange and advanced than any legend has ever told us. A recent and surprising discovery beneath the Great Pyramid of Giza has sparked debates among experts and captured the imagination of people around the world. For a long time, many believed that the Great Pyramid was mainly built as a tomb for the pharaoh Khufu. Researchers focused mostly on its surface features, like how perfectly it aligns with the cardinal directions, and on its impressive internal chambers and passageways. But now, new evidence points to something much larger and more mysterious lying deep underground. Thanks to modern tools like LiDAR scanning and advanced ground-penetrating radar, scientists have found clues that suggest a vast system of underground tunnels, deep shafts, and huge chambers hidden beneath the pyramid. These structures seem to stretch for long distances under the desert, carved deep into the bedrock. Some studies even describe 8 or more large vertical shafts spiraling downward. At their deepest points, These shafts lead to large, square-shaped rooms that are said to be dozens of meters wide. What makes this discovery especially strange is that these underground spaces are not natural caves. They have a precise shape and organized layout, which strongly suggests they were carefully planned and built for a specific purpose. This raises big questions. Were these tunnels used for something more than just storage or secret burial chambers? Some researchers think these underground structures might connect to theories that the pyramid had a technological or energy-related function. One theory, from author Christopher Dunn, suggests that the Great Pyramid could have been built as a giant power plant. He believed it may have used Earth's natural vibrations to produce energy. While most mainstream scholars are very cautious about accepting this idea, they agree that the true reason for these deep tunnels has never been fully explained. Some traditional theories say they might have been part of religious ceremonies or used for controlling water. Exploring these tunnels has been very difficult due to safety risks and government restrictions. But despite the limited access, the scans and early investigations continue to suggest that there's still a lot we don't know about the true design and purpose of the pyramid. These findings are pushing experts to rethink what they know about ancient Egyptian engineering. It's possible that people living during Khufu's time had more advanced knowledge than we previously believed. As for why the ancient builders created such an elaborate underground system, there are several different theories. One common idea is that the tunnels were used for spiritual or religious purposes. Ancient Egyptians placed great importance on the afterlife, and they often built hidden rooms or passages to protect sacred items and help the spirits of the dead on their journey. In this view, the underground maze might have been a protected area for religious rituals or for storing powerful, sacred artifacts. Another theory is more practical. Some believe these tunnels were part of a system for controlling water. Ancient Egypt relied heavily on the Nile River and its yearly floods. So, it's possible that the pyramid's builders created large underground channels to manage groundwater. These tunnels might have kept the pyramid dry during flooding or prevented the foundation from becoming unstable. The spiral-shaped shafts, in this case, could have been part of a complex water filtration or drainage system. There are also more unusual ideas. Some people think the pyramid was a kind of machine, a giant energy generator. They say that the design could have focused and used vibrations from the Earth itself. These ideas are inspired by the work of scientists like Nikola Tesla, and again by Christopher Dunn's theory that the pyramid was built to be a power plant. Although many archaeologists don't agree with these claims, the extraordinary precision of the construction and the size of the hidden underground structures make it hard to ignore the possibility of advanced technology. Because much of the underground system has not been fully explored or mapped, there are still many unanswered questions. Some of the deepest parts are either unstable, filled with water, or too dangerous to reach. Government rules also limit how much exploration is allowed. But as technology gets better, future robotic missions or deeper scans might finally help us understand whether these underground passages were built for religion, engineering, or something even stranger. Now let's return to Egypt, where archaeologists have found something just as fascinating: mummified animals near the Giza Plateau. The Egyptians didn't only build pyramids, they also had a deep spiritual connection with animals. While most people know Giza for its 3 pyramids and the Sphinx, there are also many tombs, tunnels, and smaller buildings nearby. In some of these, archaeologists have found collections of mummified animals. Some of the most interesting finds are statues of crocodiles that actually contain real mummified crocodiles, wrapped in linen. These were offerings to the crocodile god Sobek, who represented protection and fertility. Other animals found mummified include cats, baboons, snakes, ibises, and scarab beetles. Each animal was linked to a specific god. For example, cats were connected to the goddess Botet, while ibises were linked to Thoth, the god of writing and wisdom. People would buy these mummified animals and place them in temples or tombs as offerings to the gods. They believed doing so would help them with things like health, good fortune, or safe passage to the afterlife. Archaeologists have even found entire tunnels lined with thousands of these mummified animals. It turns out there was a whole industry built around raising animals and preparing them for religious offerings. Even though the process for mummifying animals wasn't as complex as it was for humans, it still took skill. The animals' organs had to be removed, their bodies dried using natron, a type of salt, and then they were wrapped carefully. These animal mummies show us just how important religion was in daily Egyptian life. While most people focus on the Grand Pyramids, the practice of animal mummification gives us a more personal look at what ancient Egyptians believed and how they worshipped. Recent studies using modern scanning technology have revealed that ancient Egyptian artworks were sometimes changed or repainted. This discovery shows that the Egyptians were willing to update even their most sacred art. At sites like Thebes and other ancient cities, portable X-ray scanners have detected hidden layers of paint beneath the surface. For example, in one image, an arm appears to have been moved or made longer, suggesting that either the original artist or a later priest changed the pose for symbolic reasons. In other cases, religious symbols connected to specific gods were modified, repainted, or completely replaced. These changes may have happened because of shifts in political power or changes in religious beliefs. A new king, for instance, might have wanted to erase the symbols of a previous ruler or promote worship of a different god. One remarkable example is the artwork of Pharaoh Ramesses II. Scans show that parts of his royal clothing and symbols were redone during his long reign. This might have reflected changing ideas about what power and kingship meant. For a long time, many believed that Egyptian art never changed and followed strict, unbreakable rules. But now we know that small changes, or even major updates, were more common than previously thought. These changes not only add more meaning to the artwork but also show how religion, politics, and personal decisions were deeply connected in ancient Egypt. Thanks to non-invasive scanning tools, researchers can now study what lies beneath the surface of these paintings without damaging them. Another famous mystery in Egypt is the missing nose of the Great Sphinx of Giza. The Sphinx is a huge statue with a lion's body and a human head. If you've seen pictures of it, you've probably noticed that its nose is gone. Many legends try to explain what happened. One popular story says that Napoleon's soldiers shot it off with a cannon in the late 1700s. However, drawings made before Napoleon's time already show the Sphinx without a nose. Historical records suggest that a man named Muhammad Sa'im al-Dar, a religious leader from the 1300s, may have broken the nose. He may have believed that people were worshipping the Sphinx and giving it offerings during